Hello everyone, it is I, the second antagonizer, coming to you to show you a game engine that I built for an indie game that I'm working on called Faded Solitude. Right here we have the editor for the game engine. Now this editor doesn't utilize all the logic in the game engine, just some parts that allow me to conveniently bring in and move around sprites in scenes and levels and whatnot. And here we have a couple of sprites here that you can see. One is displayed as green, which it shouldn't be. Yeah, we have a few sprites displayed here. And the goal of this video is really just to show you, one, to advertise my game a little bit, but this isn't some of the main features of the game. This is like a practice scene here. But the main reason, the second reason, is to show you just how complicated programming can be and how simple problems can become extremely complicated. And you're going to see that firsthand with me doing something quite simple. So basically, I have my sprites here, and you can select them, and you can see that you see the name of the sprite here, and you see name of the sprite there. And also, if I move around, I've got some foreground movement, which is pretty cool. This is moving a lot. So this is like, I guess you could say this is very close to the camera, this is far away, based on kind of the movement here. Yeah, and you can see that the names of the sprites here, foreground 1, correspond to the names of the sprites in the tree nodes, tree view here. And we've got some nodes here, and you can see when I'm clicking the nodes, you can see the colors change, indicating which item is being selected, and it's showing the position, the world coordinates that I've kind of built in there. So yeah, we've got that feature available, which is pretty cool. So what I want to do is I want to do something very simple right now. In fact, I might actually bring in a new object. I'll set this as a foreground object as well. This in. I want to explain what foreground objects are. They're basically objects that can move in the foreground. And I have to adjust this movement here if I want to move it. But anyway, you can see that this object here, this is foreground 2 object. I don't know why some objects still are kind of selected a bit. The green hovering doesn't change sometimes. But you can see this object is in front of this object here, right? This box is in front of this pillar, and what I would like to do is I'd like to just move this box behind the pillar. Pretty simple, right? And what I want to do, and to do that, I would like to just click the node here, which in this case, the box is the foreground 2 object, and basically just click and drag it up like this. And just, if I drag it on top of sprite 0, it would go in front of sprite 0. You can see right now it isn't. It's currently red right now because I was doing some tinkering, so don't worry about that. Yeah, currently right now, I can't click and drag it. I can't rearrange items in the node view, and I can't move this behind my sprite objects. So that's all I want to do. If I move this box here above foreground 1, I want it to go above foreground 1, which is this object here. Behind the object, which is this pillar here. And yeah, that's what we're going to do. So it sounds pretty simple. It's literally kind of 2 features. Click and drag on this. Well, I mean, it's one feature essentially. It's click and drag on the view here, and that triggers an event to essentially rearrange the sprites in the seats in the scene. So yeah, to do that, I'm going to need to register a click event here. So if I click onto this item here, the foreground 2, it registers that I've clicked the object. So we have to essentially have kind of like a pointer to the tree node object and kind of store its data so we know which item we're referring to. And when I drag it up, you can see right now as I'm dragging, nothing's happening. I'm actually clicking and dragging, and there's no UI indicators that's telling me that I'm moving it at all, right there. So I'm going to have to develop some sort of UI indicator. So that's why I have this highlighted as red, because I was playing a little bit before, and basically I'm just going to maybe use highlighting to just change the background color. I know underlining, having a little underline thing is something that I think Unity does, for example, but I'm not sure how to do that with the Windows Form Editor that I'm using. This Windows Form Editor is very simple, so there might be a feature for that somewhere, but I'm not sure where it is. So yeah, all I'm going to do right now is I'm just going to try and get this object to, as I'm kind of clicking and dragging, kind of changing the colors here to indicate which item's going to be replaced, which item's going to be switched essentially, right? So I'll X this off. Sorry about that, I just need to press pause for a bit to turn on the fan. It is really hot here where I'm living right now. It's very hot. Cool, alright. So if you hear a fan in the background, well, I guess life's just gonna have to be hard for you. I can stop watching. Whatever. So we get the tree. So what I'm gonna do is I've got some events here. I've got a node mouse click event. So when I click on the node, we have this event that gets fired, and we have this item drag event here. So if I go to this event here, this activates essentially whenever I hold down left mouse button and kind of move the node, I guess you could say. So kind of click and drag. We've got an item move, and I've got like just to kind of displaying something to the log here. You can see the event is fired down here because it's equivalent to this piece of code that I've written here. If I run the application, and then I do so I'm going to I'm going to comment that out. So there's a few. So basically, we want to start this event. We want to start off with the item move, right? So as soon as we activate the item move, as the mouse is hovering over other nodes, we basically want maybe a hover event to be called. We're gonna have to figure something out there, or because I know that item move. So I think I'll just like maybe create a boolean in here that's telling the item to start moving, essentially, right? So if you go into here, now that I've implemented some sort of basic hover, as I'm kind of hovering over the objects here, something should activate. node hover. Interesting. So we got some hovering. Now let's see if the hover event will activate. So I basically created what I did then. That little speed up is I just created a new hover event for the nodes. Let's see if that hover event is still activating when I do. So if I'm hovering over it like this, it should still detect it. I'm wondering if it detects it after the drag. So, yep, so we're doing a drag on tree node. So we start to do drag on foreground 1, and then after doing the drag, we can see that we're also detecting a hover on the first foreground, which is foreground_0, which is really good. That's kind of what I want. That makes my job a lot easier. So now that I know that works, now that I know hovering works, while I can do a click and drag, now we can start implementing changing the background color for the hover. And so I've created a little boolean. So when I do a hover, that boolean will kick off. And once that boolean, we'll essentially call it a flag. Once that flag activates, then it goes, okay, I know you're doing a, an item drag. Sorry, this is a drag event here. I know you're doing an item drag. So now I'm gonna, now when my node mouse hover event trigger, I'm gonna change the background color of the other nodes that you're hovering over to tell you which node you're going to be replacing in the tree. So we're going to do that now. Okay, so now that we've implemented that feature, you can see that as I do a click and drag, we get the color of the other node. Oh, and we also, the color of that node changes, and also I stopped dragging, but you notice that the second item also changes its color. We don't want that. But the reason why it's doing that is because I fired a boolean. As soon as I started the drop, I set the boolean to true to start changing the background color, and that boolean hasn't been set to false. So we'll just continuously keep setting things to red, even. Oh, these ones. Oh, see, even these ones are doing it as well, right? So, and those are these objects here. We're not focusing on these objects, but anyway, I was just showing us a little example there. Weird selection problem going on here. So yeah, what we need to do is we need to essentially turn that off, so we don't keep. You can even see it's doing it for everything else, which is kind of humorous. So I'm going to turn that little boolean off as well. So we're going to do that. Oh, also, by the way, before I kind of speed up the video again, how I kind of set the background color is when I did the node hover event. In that node hover event, I have the boolean here, which is set to true on item move. So as soon as I click down and start moving, this boolean is set to true. And then this hover is activated when I hover over other items. And then we grab the node and we just change its color to red, which is kind of straightforward and kind of easy to read here. And again, we're just kind of logging to the terminal. Anything that I don't talk about in this video in terms of like code that you see, don't worry about it. Just disregard it. Don't let it overcomplicate things. Yep, so now we're going to turn up boolean off. Okay, that's actually all I need to do. I was being silly. So on the mouse up, as we're doing our click and dragging, we're holding onto the left mouse cursor. When we release, we set the boolean to false. So that was a boolean that was allowing us to set the colors of the other nodes to red. So when we set that to false, we should stop setting things to red. Simple, right? So let's start up. Well, this little stuff is simple at least. Okay. We'll bring this down. We do a click. Start dragging. You can see that's being set to red. Then we release. And then you can see that we're not setting anything else to red. So that's nice. But you can also see that the item is still essentially, this item is still red, right? Not only that, but if I click and drag, as I'm kind of dragging up, if I continue to drag, I'm pretty much selecting a whole bunch of other things that I don't want to select as well. Not only that, but I'm I'm selecting everything is coming up as red, and I don't want to. I want to indicate that I'm replacing one item, not all items, right? So as I'm kind of going up the chain, right, what I'd like is what I'd like is as one item turns to red, and when I go to the next item, the previous item should go back to the original color, so it should have no background color, and the new item should be lit up. And when I let go of the cursor, no else is turned to red, that's happening now, which is pretty good. So yeah, so right now I'm gonna have to implement as I am kind of going up the tree. We're kind of swapping the colors around, so I'm gonna implement that feature now. Okay, so what I've basically done here is I've created another variable that just says that holds on to our previous node that was highlighted. So the previous node that was highlighted will if the previous node exists, if it's not null, then the color will just be set to transparent. So we should be able to just see, no background basically being set behind it, which is what we want. And then we continue to go down. We set the color to red for the current node, and we set the current node back to the previous node. It just kind of goes back and forth, so on and so forth. And that kind of loops through as you continue to kind of move the cursor around, right? So I'm going to start. Hopefully it doesn't crash. What I'm going to do is to make this example a little probably easier. So I'm going to bring in another sprite. Cool. So now I have two sprites. Click, drag. Yep. Look at that. Great, right? But we can even replace it with itself, which is a bit weird, but I don't think that matters much. And then when I release my cursor, you can see that the item is still red. So that's a problem, right? So we need to fix that. Also, when I click and drag again, you can see that it's changing it back to red. But as I'm going up, I'm also selecting the parent of the node to be red as well. I don't want to do that. This parent node is supposed to hold a collection of the other nodes. This is just convenient user interfacing. So I don't want this to be highlighted red. That's a bit weird, right? Because I don't want that to be replaced. Now, I mean, I could choose not to fix that, but it's a little bit weird. Just gonna leave it, but nonetheless, when I release my mouse, it's still red, and I need to fix that as well. So that should have resolved the problem there. We send our mouse up, we go to the previous node, and we just set the background color to transparent, kind of pretty much the same as what we did in here. I could copy this code into a method. In fact, I should refactor a lot of this code into its own probably class, because in this class here, I'm just basically writing it all in the form. So I've got other stuff going on in here that's irrelevant to what I'm doing right now. That's irrelevant to the tree, really. For example, I'm loading in a bunch of like populate list view. I'm loading in a bunch of like sprite objects and whatnot, and I've got a few other things going on. And pan movement, I'm setting that, so it's a bit messy in here. It's all around a bit of a mess. So, setting it to its own class is a challenge in itself too. But yeah, we've got the mouse up, setting the background color to transparent again, which is pretty good. We'll see if that works. Open it up. I'm going to bring another object in again. Well, did I bring that as a foreground? Yeah, I did. That's good. Okay. And I'll just set its pan movement speed to 0.5 something, so it kind of moves a little bit with the rest of the items. And I'll just move this in front of this or whatever here. I'll probably commit this, so we see this object, this new foreground object, when we go back in the scene again. Click, drag, great, release, great. We released, and now nothing else is being selected as red anymore. So I could also do the same for these parent objects, which, let's see, I also do. I can also do the same with the I can also click and drag the parent sprites as well. So I guess if I could detect that, I could be detecting that it's a parent. Yep. So I'm going to also have to detect if there's a parent object, and if there is a parent object, just ignore that parent object. That being said, though, if I click and drag here, you can see that it's also asked me to replace with normal sprites. So foreground sprites are different to normal sprites because they don't move, as I've shown previously. So I don't want to be able to switch a foreground sprite with a sprite because that's really weird because that sprite ends up going into foreground sprites and the foreground sprite ends up going into sprites. So I don't want that either. That's a little bit of a weird one. So I'm gonna have to fix that up. Okay. Okay, so what I've done here is I've essentially, as we're moving the item, here it was in the event handle for the item move, so when I'm doing the click and drag, what I'm doing is I'm checking its parent, and if its parent exists, so if its parent is not equal to null, then we just say parent exists, and we say, here's the parent. And if it doesn't, we just say, the parent doesn't exist. So I'm performing this little check here, because what I'm going to do, so when I run the engine, the idea behind this code that I've written here is that, hurry up and load, the foreground sprite's here. So this foreground sprite here, you can see that there's no as a parent for the foreground sprites. There's no as a parent up here, right? There's nothing else. It's pretty much it's at the top of the tree, alongside backgrounds and everything else and whatnot, and sprites and doors and whatnot. Haven't implemented doors, interactables, and collectibles. That's something for the future. But yeah, you see how much work I got here? Yeah, Lord, this is just a simple problem. So yeah, so. What the test I'm going to do here is I'm going to click, do an item move here, release, and I'm going to click, do an item move here, release. Let's see here, what do we got? So for the first time I clicked, we got parent exists, so and it says the foreground sprites right here. And the second time we got parent does not exist, right? That's pretty good. So that means that when I clicked on the ignore these also have mouse. This is jargon crap that's still in there. So that means the second time I clicked and drag, which the second time I clicked and drag was on its parent, which didn't have a parent. So of course, the foreground sprites, that tree node, since it didn't have a parent, it was going to display this one. And for the item underneath the foreground sprites, that one did have a parent, which was the foreground sprites, right? Yeah, I probably could explain it better than that. But yeah, basically, I clicked on an item that was a child of the foreground sprites, so of course it had a parent. And second time, I clicked on the parent itself, and that parent was not a child of another node, so it complained and said that it did exist, which is good. That's exactly what we want. So now that I know that that's the case, whenever we do an item move on a parent, we do not turn the boolean on. We leave it off. We forget about it. We're not moving anything, right? So what I'm going to do here is, if the tree node.parent is equal to null, I probably want to put the tree node a little bit higher up here up the chain. So if the tree nodes, so we get the tree node that we're moving on. So E is returning the tree, the node. So we just convert that node into an object that we can kind of play with, and then we just check its parent. And if its parent is equal to null, which is, so if it doesn't exist, we'll just return. So we're gonna skip turning this flag on. So we're not even gonna activate the boolean, and when we don't activate the boolean, we don't activate the colors, right? So let's test this out. Cool, you can see I'm clicking and dragging and it's not doing anything. Right, there's no colors being set or anything like that, which is really good. Here, if I click and drag, you can still see that that's working as intended, which is great. If I move it up to this, but you can see as I'm moving it up, it's still selecting, the parent, right? So it didn't work initially on click and drag when I was clicking the foreground sprite's parent, but if I start clicking the children, and then scroll up and then move my cursor up to the parent is getting selected too. So that's another problem that we're going to solve. So we solved the problem of clicking and dragging on parent objects, so that doesn't work, which is pretty good. You can see this is also getting set to, I don't know what's going on there, it's a bit weird, the text is disappearing. I don't know what's going on there. It's a bit odd, but I don't think that's a major bug, it's not a big deal. So I'm not going to bother fixing it. So yeah, we don't want to, and you can continue to go through here as well. Look at that, it's not good, we don't want that. We're going up to all the other objects. So, yep, I've got to fix that. I've got to make sure that as I'm clicking and dragging, when we do turn the boolean on, the colors, as we're moving, as we are hovering over the other objects, the sprites that we don't want to be selected, the sprites that we don't want to be that shouldn't change color, we got to make sure that those ones don't change color, right? So to do that, I guess what you could do is the child item that you click on, you grab its parent, and you check that the parent of the other items that you're hovering over is equal to the parent of the child item that you're currently clicking on. So we don't hover over any of the other items. So yeah, I'm going to solve that one. Okay, that has solved our problem. I've created another variable called prev node parent. So now we save the state of the original parent that was essentially selected, and we compare that to the current parent, the current node that we're hovering over. We compare that to the parent of the current node we're hovering over. And if they're not equal, then we go, okay, well then we're not going to do a highlighting. So we'll run the game. And essentially we grab the parent node on the item move. So as soon as we begin the item move, we grab that parent object, and it shouldn't select the parents. Okay, cool. So it's not selecting the parents, and we're keeping, it's basically stuck on the same item here, which is red, which is fine. Actually, I'm happy with that. I don't mind keeping it like that. I think that that's pretty cool. I'm happy for it to stay selected like that as I'm scrolling out, as I'm moving out and clicking and dragging out, it's not selecting anything else, which is exactly what we want. So that's really good. That was just the colors. That was literally just UI colors, and the amount of problems that we needed to solve for the UI colors was crazy. So now that we've done that, essentially now we're going to be switching the objects in the foreground sprites. So we're going to be switching these. So when I move this up, click drag, and I release, then we're going to be switching foreground 2 with foreground 0. So we're going to be switching those nodes, either switching the nodes or changing the names, essentially. Likely we're going to be switching the nodes because I think I've set key variables for the nodes as well. So, yep, I'm going to go and do that now. Okay, so this theoretically should do it. This is a little odd though, so it might not even work, but we'll see. So basically what I've done is I've set up a little pointer temp node to point to I've created a new boolean, the selected node. So that keeps track of the original node that we performed the click and drag on. So before we did the drag, the node that we clicked on, that's that selected node, right? And so we also have the prev node, which is the current node that we're hovering over. So what I'm doing is I'm switching them. So I'm essentially removing both of them from the parent here. with these 2 lines of code, and then I'm essentially inserting them back into their parents again. But you can see I'm inserting the selected node at the index of the previous node, so the node that we're dropping it on top of, and we're setting the previous node, which was the node that we're replacing it with. We're setting it was at the position of the original node, which is the selected node that we first clicked on, right? So it's probably a bit confusing, but yeah. So essentially, yeah. So the current node that we want to replace. So the current node that we're currently hovering over, we're grabbing that index and putting the selected one, the original one that we clicked on, in that position. And we're doing the opposite on the second line. So I'll start the application. Hopefully this works. Might just crash. Might fall to pieces. This object in memory might be deallocated, so temp node might be nothing, and it's... Hold on, let's have a look here. I'm not even using this temp node, actually. I don't think we even need it. Yep. Don't see why I'm not even used. Why did I even set that? Cool, let's run it. And I'm setting prev node to null at the end of it because we're done with the operation. We don't need it anymore. Cool, let's see if this works. Nope, we got a crash. So immediately as soon as we so mouse up, must go for everything. So okay, so mouse up must mean, yeah, mouse up. I essentially clicked on an item in the tree anywhere in the tree view, and it detected that my mouse went up, and it ran this command. And obviously we haven't allocated the selected node yet, because we haven't performed the click and drag, so it's complaining that the selected node doesn't exist. So we're gonna fix that bug as well here. So we're gonna go, okay, prev node. Let's see here. If selected node is not equal to null, is equal to null, sorry. So if the selected node has not been allocated, return. Great. Let's see if that works. Great. Expand it out. Here's the moment of truth. Move it around, release. There we go. They've switched positions. So you saw 2 was at the bottom, now 2 is up the top. And so we can do the same with 1. Let's drag 1 down to 0 here. And we switch those 2 as well. Now, when I click on this, let's see here. We go up. Prev node. Oh, we're probably gonna have to check prev node as well. Or prev node. User of those is set to null, then let's return. Let's get out of there. Great. Actually, we can... A better way to solve this problem is, I think, just check if not moving tree node. That's probably an easier way to solve this problem. We can drag. Yep, we're still doing it. Drag down. Yep. Drag up. Yep. Cool. Close this. Click on other things. Cool. All right. Let's check it if it's doing it with the sprites as well. Yep, it's doing it with the sprites. If I click on this foreground item, I select that one, which is good. 0, that's 0. This is the second one. We're still selecting them correctly. That's good. We're still selecting the correct objects. Great. So you have to perform those tests to make sure that when I click on the corresponding node, they correspond to the appropriate item that we're trying to select. Right? So we're testing that still works properly, and it seems to still work properly, so that's good. So now that we've switched the nodes around, we need to actually go in and now switch these sprites around as well, and completely rearrange them in the list. And when I say list, by the way, I mean this is going to be different than the node list. So we've sorted the node problem, we've solved that. That's pretty much done. Now we're going to essentially solve the sprite problem. So when we move this around in the view here, we've moved, say, when we move object foreground 2, this object here behind foreground 1, which is this object here, then it goes behind it. So right here I've got a simple, and I hope this works, a simple algorithm just to switch the sprite objects. So I have a sprite list, and this is the list of, I probably need this as a virtual. Yeah, so I've got a method here. So I've got a list of sprites in a scene. So I've got sprite manager and foreground manager as well. The foreground manager is the one we actually want because we're switching the foreground objects. But this should essentially apply for all objects, right? And the sprite editor, the foreground extends from the sprite editor. So this function here is going to be utilized for foreground as well, which is pretty good. Just make that virtual so we can kind of override it in each of the classes. Don't worry about what that means. But this is essentially the algorithm. It's just, we grab one of the items here, which is a really long piece of code. So we grab, we've got our levels. So in the list, it's like two-dimensional. We've got the level that the objects are in, and then the name of that specific object. So that's all that really is in our sprite list. So we grab the first object here, and we swap that object. There's this object here. You can see it's different because we've got name 2, name 1, and name 2. And then we set name 2 to temp sprite, and temp sprite is name 1. Name 1 is set to name 2. So yeah, we've got a little switcheroo happening here, which is good. Great. So I'm going to essentially have to call this method here in the in the form. So after we do the switch in the tree node, we essentially want to grab the displayed level, which is essentially what is displayed in my viewport. So the level that where all the sprites were, and all the cool fancy imagery was happening. That's what this displayed variable object is. It's essentially that viewport. So we have that, and we want to swap. No, not that. Maybe it's the wrong one. Maybe I gotta do display level 1 sprite foreground. Yeah, and we want to do swap sprites. Here we go. So we go to the foreground editor, foreground manager, and we do swap sprites. So essentially, we would have to call this for, yeah, we'd have to call that for not just to foreground, but for any of the ones we're switching. So if we're switching textures for sprites, we need to switch for sprites. Or if we're switching the textures for foreground, we're switching the textures for foreground. But let's just do foreground for now. So let's do. So we run the engine here. Or the editor, sorry. Go in the editor. And now let's do, so we want to switch this object here, which is foreground 2, with foreground 1? Yeah. Yep, okay. We'll do it that way. Let's see if this works. Okay, we've done it. That's pretty cool. Yay. So now, I don't know why this is still green, that's a bit annoying, but whatever. We've done it, we've switched the nodes here, which is very cool. So we've moved this one, yeah, we moved the box behind, yeah, pillar. Only issue is, this doesn't necessarily work for, currently this doesn't work for sprites, right? So we can't do this for sprites yet, because we're only doing it for foreground objects, right? If I try to do it for sprites, so for example, I bring a new sprite in, this scary looking mysterious dude, you will find out who he is when you play the game. But for now, he's just kind of mysterious and he's there. So we'll put him, he's black, so that doesn't kind of work very well. Let's just go back to the box. Let's delete him. Go back to the box again. Let's make another, yeah, keep it as sprite, so it goes under the sprite list. Just you can select what type of object it is before bringing it into the scene. So we bring it in. Yeah, so that's much better. So we got that one on top of that one. And so that's sprite 2. You can see because the green border gets selected here. And that's sprite 1 behind it. So we're going to do a switcheroo. Doesn't work. It works with the sprites here in the viewport here, but doesn't work here, unfortunately, because we don't have, we've only got a function for the foreground sprites. So what I have to do here is I have to detect essentially what tree node we already know we've already got some information about the tree node that we're under, and we have to grab that information relating to the the parent node. So for example, sprites, and say, okay, we're moving something in sprites, switch to sprite objects. Okay, we're moving something on the foreground, switch to foreground objects, right? So we got the foreground objects working, and now we need to get the sprites, and we also need to set this up to be scalable for everything else now, because I've got NPCs, I've got interactables, I've got collectibles, I've got doors, which aren't in the scene right now, but they're going to be in the future. So this algorithm that I'm going to make, that's going to make it work for sprites and foreground, it has to be scalable. So we're going to look into that. Okay, so hopefully this is enough to make it scalable. What I've done is I've grabbed the index of the parent node here. So for all of the parent nodes in our tree view, so if I run the game here, all of the parents in the tree view here, they all have their own index. So for example, backgrounds would have index of 0 because it's at the beginning, NPCs 1, interactables 2, 3, so foreground sprites would be 4, and then sprites would be 5. So we grab that node index and we compare it to the node index within the objects of, say, the foreground editor manager, the sprite manager. As I've already got the indexes initialized in those classes. So we just pass the parent's index into it and compare the index, and if it's not equal, then we don't do the swap. If it is equal, we continue and we do the swap. Simple as that. Yeah. Hopefully that works, but we'll see. There's one thing as well that's important to note, is that when I go back into the editor, you can see that the objects go back to their default positions again, right? So I got it to manage. I got this one to move behind that one previously successfully, but that didn't persist. Those changes didn't persist. So when I reran the editor, they're back to where they originally were. So to solve that problem, I could tie some of that logic into the commit as well, which is another thing that I'd have to do. Right, so this simple problem is becoming even more complicated now because the states that are changing need to persist, and they're not persisting, and so we need to do that as well. That's another tacked on complexity, right? So it kind of really nails my my message home, right? So we'll bring in the box, which I should have saved. Bring in a sprite. That's a sprite. Move this one behind it. Brilliant. I'll just commit this so we can save it. So this sprite will be in the engine next time we launch it, which is the editor next time we launch it. So sprite 2, we can see it's selecting the box, which is good. Now let's see if we can actually rearrange. Hold on. Yep, that's sprite 1. The number 1 is behind it. So let's move number 2 behind number 1, and let's see if it actually works. Good. It works for sprites as well, so that's great. Let's see if foregrounds still work. Select this. Good, that still works as well. Great. Yeah, fantastic. So that's good. That works as intended. So now when you see, did I close the editor? let me just remove this console log here. It's not needed anymore. And we relaunch the application. You can see that they're back to their default states, right? They're back to where they originally were. And if I remove sprite 2, and sprite 1, and I commit, and you can see it's in front of the box right now. This is like a little bevel, by the way. If you don't know what this is, it's like a little. We use it for like concrete and stuff. So that's all it really is. Launch it up again, and you can see that actually, I think that did work. Did that just work? I was surprised. Actually, I think that kind of makes sense. But its IDs aren't commit. Okay, it is committing successfully by the looks of it. However, you can see that this is now foreground 2, not the box. Right, so that's I don't know if that's going to be a problem in the long run. And it might be. It might. If I decide to make custom names for objects, I think it certainly would be a problem in the future. But as long as I don't make objects with custom names, which right now I don't really need, again, that's a whole different story. And then I guess I could keep this as is. So good, that kind of commits. I'm not going to explain why that works. It just just does, because it's no need, because it already works. I'll just say committing. Yeah, it just saves the status of the sprites and to a file that we use in the game, for example. So when I run the game, and whoops, sorry, I don't want to activate that. Yeah, you can see that it's behind. They're behind it correctly. You can really see that depths, which is nice when we're playing the game. Also some texture bleeding that I gotta remove there. But and bleeding up the top here, but this needs to be further up. This is basically just a dummy scene. So this is not gonna be actually in the actual game itself. So this is just a screw around. This is essentially what it's supposed to look like. You see, where it kind of cuts off nicely at the top. It looks like it's connecting to something, but you can't see it's further up. That's essentially what it's supposed to look like. Not like this. This is silly. But you can see that the box is behind it, which is what I wanted to showcase, and the box is behind this one as well, which is pretty good. So that's showcasing the game. So yeah, that's my little tutorial to show just how complicated something simple can be as a developer. And I hope this was insightful, and I hope my rambling was at least somewhat coherent for this little tutorial. Have a nice day, and I will see you guys later.